Welcome back to Odd Socks. So there's going to be a frost this weekend, so there's certain things that I really do need to get out the ground or harvest because there's a risk of me losing it. So we're going to go through today, harvest what we've got and see how well we've actually done this year. So one of the things that can tolerate a frost down to about -4 is your beetroots. But I'm actually going to take some of these up because I've actually got quite a lot all the way around the allotment. Now, it is a lot of beetroot, but I really enjoy eating beetroot, and it can be enjoyed in multiple different ways. But the thing you do have to be a bit more careful with beetroot is if it's on the ground, more prone to the surface, frost can actually damage it quite a lot. Now, if you are going to try and keep your beetroots in the ground for as long as possible, mulching it with a bit of straw or a bit of fleece or something like that will actually really protect it. Now, the temperatures aren't going to get cold enough this weekend to actually damage this, and it looks like it is a short spell of cold. But I'm going to take up some of these ones that have been on the surface, and maybe a few of these may be going a little bit woody. But I want to make the most of this crop, so I'll be harvesting as much of this as possible. Now, I grew multiple different types of beetroot this year, from the cylindrical to the Moulin Rouge and a couple of others. Now, this is the second lot of sowing of these beetroots. I've already had the first lot that I sowed earlier on in the year. And we've got some all around the allotment. So these are a little bit smaller, but I'm happy to have them smaller. Now, we found last year that beetroot actually did survive quite well in even the extreme weather, so long as you protected the tops. So I'll harvest what I want that I can happily process over the next day or two, or store, and the rest I'll keep in the ground and just see how it goes. But that's not a bad size beetroot. Now again, you don't have to take your beetroots up at the moment. It should be, unless you're in a really extreme coldness, like -4 or more. I suppose that's not really extreme, is it? But you should be okay. But I'd rather take out some now and make sure that I've got a good crop than to lose any. Now, all these were multi-sown, so they were never going to get massive anyway, but I don't need them massive. So to have more in the smaller space, I'm happy with. Now, some of these are a really good size. I can't wait to start tucking into these. Now, another thing I'll be harvesting is these carrobies. Now, I had nothing but issues with either pigeons or other pest damage this year, and now the whitefly is trying to take over. It is a smaller crop than I normally grow, but something is better than nothing at all. Now, some of these carrobies really have been decimated. Slugs, snails, whitefly, pigeons. This is the first year that we've had so many issues with pests at the moment. But next year I'm hoping to diversify a little bit more, and hopefully it might actually slow down some of this pest damage. This one's a little bit more edible. Not the prettiest of things. Again, they didn't actually grow that well this year. It's been a really weird year for us. Last year was our first year on this allotment, and we had fantastic success. This year, not as much. We've had a few more issues. But it doesn't mean next year's going to be bad. And we've always had really healthy carrobies when we've grown at home. And I'm going to have a look at some more different varieties to see if I can reduce some of the issues that we're actually having with it. Now, you can see the fennel that I'd planted previously, the earlier sowing, all bolted and all went to flower quite quickly. I think our weather at the beginning of the year was not exactly the perfect conditions for growing it. but I've left it in because it really is beautiful, and the native wildlife really do enjoy visiting the flowers. Where this fennel was actually sown and planted later on in the year, just literally a couple of months ago, and this has actually kept its bulb really well. Now, I'm not going for massive bulbs, and these could get damaged by the frost, so I am going to harvest what I've got and leave some of the smaller, weaker bulbs to see if they will actually carry on growing for a little bit longer. Now, these aren't the biggest bulbs, but they'll do me. So I'm just going to take off some of the fronds and tidy it up a little bit. I'm going to keep that little one in. Now, I don't want loads and loads of fennel anyway, because it's only me at the moment that eats this. But I'm going to prep this to have towards Christmas, because there's a few different dishes I want to try with it. But at least I'll get a multiple different bulbs. And I do love the taste of fennel. Now, fennel will cope with a little bit of frost, but just not too much. And I'd rather harvest it now and get something than to lose it, because even though it says it's going to be frosty, especially if you live in a hollow or something like that, you could get a heavier frost than maybe even just a mile or two down the road. Now, these are not going to win any prizes for size or looks or anything, but I'm really not growing it for that. Now, these fronds are edible as well, but at the moment I actually have no use for it. But I may try and dehydrate some to use for later on in the season. It's always nice to have a vegetable that you can use multiple parts of. And I'll have to see if the chickens can eat this, because it actually might make some good chicken feed. Now, the rest I'm going to leave in. So I've only harvested 4 or 5, but it's a start. I've also got a few lettuces ready, and I only need to take the one, but these will be damaged by the frost. But if I harvest too many at a time, I'm not going to get a chance to use them, and they'll be wasted. So I'll just take 1 or 2 for now. Now, normally I'll harvest lettuces for the leaves, but because we're getting too late in the season now, I'm just going to harvest the whole head. Now, considering these got decimated at the beginning of the growing season, they really did pull through much better than some of the other lettuces. Now, these are all rounders, and they did do quite well in the end. Now, again, celery is another crop that could get damaged by any frost. Now, again, I was never growing this celery for massive stems. It's more for me to cut down and put into stocks and stews. Now, thankfully, it was quite wet this year for this celery, which is great because they love the extra water. And it's the one thing to keep in mind if you're going to grow celery. It really does like wetter conditions. So you must remember to keep it well watered. Now, I'm just going to cut this from the base and leave the actual base in. You'll find as you go through colder weather that your leaves will start going yellow, and you might actually find that your celery starts tasting very bitter. So I would rather process as much as I can now, either for the freezer or stocks or dehydration, than to leave it in the ground and actually lose it all. Now, I have got celeriac in here as well, but I'm finding the bulbs themselves are actually getting eaten. So I'll have to wait and see how well that actually does. And I've got a few more bits of kohlrabi in here too. 1 or 2 have done okay. Now, one of the things that are actually ready at the moment are some of the leeks. Now, these are absolutely fine in frost. There's absolutely no need to worry about it. But I don't know if you remember in past videos, this is the bed where we had the garlic in as well. Now, we grew all the leeks and the garlic in similar beds, and unfortunately we lost a lot of our garlic due to allium leaf miner. Now, because these were already in the bed, there was no point in us moving them because we were just going to spread the issue. And unfortunately, we have got allium leaf miner in the leeks. Not quite as prolific as it was in the actual garlic though. But we are starting to show signs of rust. Rust really does look like little rust spots on your leaves. Now, most of the time you'll get these and it won't do any major damage to your leeks. We try and remove any leaves that actually has rust on, not that it makes a major difference. Now, we grow ours by multi-sowing, so we get more in a smaller space. Now, they're never going to be the biggest leeks ever. Now, for us to remove these, because we have multi-sown, we'll use a little hand spade just to try and separate them a little bit. But I can see the roots have really spread out. Next year I'm going to actually grow some larger leeks. But this is what I mean about the allium leaf miner. Now, it's still edible. It just depends on how much you want to remove them. And that's the line. You can see them in there. Now, that's the larvae growing on until it's big enough to turn into that fly, and then it will just fly off and then start the cycle all over again. So we always knew that our leeks were going to get allium leaf miner, but it's still depressing when it does. Now, we won't grow any onions or any alliums like garlic or leeks or anything like that in these beds that we've had these issues with allium leaf miner this year. And if we do grow, now we're supposed to be planting our garlic very soon, but I still actually haven't bought any because I haven't got anywhere to grow garlic, not at the moment, because we had about 3 to 4 beds actually affected this year with allium leaf miner. I haven't sorted out an area for them to grow that we haven't grown onions before. We actually may miss our garlic crop for next year, but by then we'll be in a better place, have newer beds, and hopefully with the use of netting we'll actually be able to stop any of that allium leaf miner. Now, we do have Swedes, and these were weird this year. They're quite long, not quite as rounded as what we've had in the past. These will stay in the ground. These do not need to be dug up right now, and they'll be fine in the frost. And as you can see, we've got even more beetroots here. Now, again, some of these will come up, but they've really, really loved this whole area. Now, this is some of the carrots that we've got. Not bad. They are a small variety. There are Chantilly's and Paris, I think it was. And they've done okay. But these were out of the bathtub, which we had such a hard time trying to get any carrots at all to germinate. Well, the ones I did in the ground, in the composted bed, germinated literally within a few days. Now, this is some of the cabbages that we planted down towards the bottom. And as you can see, they've been quite decimated, really. Now, this one has actually firmed up quite a lot, but you can see the white fly. I think some of these will actually be absolutely fine, and again, they won't have any problem growing in any cold condition. Now, this is the last of our spinach. Now, I will come in and take the rest of the leaves that are edible. Even when it's bolted, I don't find a major issue. So I'll take up these last little bits of spinach and I'll use it in some form of cooking at home. But it really has done quite well. But as you can see, it's time for it to give up. Now I have got one cabbage that is definitely ready, and I only need one cabbage at the moment, and that's one of my red drums. You can see it actually has been really eaten, and it is covered in slugs. Now we haven't maintained this cabbage, this brassica bed, as much as what we really should have done, but we'll still get a good cabbage, good usable cabbage out of this. Now as you can see, it started to split, so that really does need to come out. But the amount of slugs, I think I'm going to have to go and get a bucket just to rehome the slugs. Now this is the thing that you're going to get if you want to grow your own fruits and veggies. You will have pest damage, you will have issues. Now if you don't want pest damage and things like that, a lot of the times it's because it's pesticides. Now I really don't want to use pesticides, and I've got nothing against anybody else using it, but I'm trying to stay away from that. But there's also good maintenance on your plot, so getting rid of any dead or decaying leaves, not giving areas for slugs and snails to actually hide, planting around those areas with things that actually slugs and snails would rather have, leaving you more chance of actually having your cabbages and things like that without being taken. But again, I'll still use this. I just need to take off the slugs and the snails. Now I've also got the last little bits of broccoli, but as you can see how many whitefly are here. Now I've kept the netting off of this area for a while because I was finding that the whitefly was really building up in there. At the moment the pigeons aren't here that often. The butterflies aren't really an issue at the moment, so I thought if I take it off and let nature start eating the whitefly, and it has reduced a little bit, but it's still quite bad. But as soon as the temperatures start dropping, these will actually start dying off a little bit more. But these little few sprouts of broccoli, even though they're only small, will be great for dinner later on. Now I'm not going to remove the actual plant because I may actually start getting extra little spikes of broccoli coming off the sides, which are just as tasty. Now this kale is coming to the end. It's the ones that I grew at the very beginning of the season, and I've just been chopping it as and when we've needed it. Now kale can last quite a long time, and you don't necessarily need multiple sowings. But the one issue that I found, because it was in the bed that was decimated by whitefly, it is now covered in whitefly eggs, which does wash off, but it really does create an additional little process that you've got to do if you want to cook it. Now a lot of people will just eat it with whitefly and all, that's fine. But if I served something on the plate that still had creepy crawlers too much on it, I don't think it would go down well. So this kale's staying in here literally just for the chickens. It's a great source of extra vitamins and minerals for the chickens, and that's exactly what it will be used for. I have got plenty of kale in the freezer to keep me going until next season, so I'm not worried about this. But it is a great chicken feed if your chickens will eat it, because it's funny, not all chickens will eat kale. So this is what I've managed to harvest for today. We've got different types of squashes, mashed potato, butternut and jumbo pink banana with a couple of spaghetti squash. We've got our carrots. We've got some leftover sweet peppers from the polytunnel. We've got our basil, our celery, a couple of leeks, our broccoli, some parsley as well, and plenty of beets and some kohlrabies with a red cabbage as well. Now there is lots more that I can harvest, and I've hardly made a dent in the actual allotment itself, but it's a start. Now so long as I can, most of these things are absolutely fine in the frost. Obviously the squashes would get damaged in any frost, but things like parsley and things like that would actually be okay, and I do believe even celery down to a -2 or so will be okay. But I want to make sure that I get at least some of the crops So making a bigger harvest than I would normally do in one go. At least I'll get something if I do start losing certain crops. Have we had our problems this year? Yes, we've definitely had our problems with our slugs, our snails, caterpillars, everything that you can think of we've had issues with this year. It's one of our hardest growing years that we've actually had, but we've still been blessed with a lot of produce. Now obviously this produce is only some of the produce that we've already had. It's a small amount, so we really are lucky to be able to grow to this amount. So for that amount that we've got done today, I'm quite happy. So tell me your success stories, guys. How have you been? How has it all gone? This was just a small video, a little show around of some of the things that we're harvesting at this time of year in mid-October. Again, I would not have harvested a lot of this stuff if we didn't have this frost coming this weekend. But just keep an eye on your weather forecast. Some areas may get some frost, some areas may get it a lot worse than others. But don't let the frost damage your fruits and vegetables. So that's it for today. Thank you for following me along today, and hopefully you'll be joining me in the next video.